Jeremy Gibbs in the HR studio. Patreon exclusive interview done. Now HR podcast grand in session. Welcome.
Thank you, mate. It's taken a while to get here, isn't it? I was thinking the other day, it's almost exactly 2 years since I first chatted to you. We spoke on the phone in 2019.
Well, I was trying to get you in the studio for a while, but you weren't ready with Forces Farming.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot has changed since then.
A lot's changed during lockdown, to be fair.
Before we get onto that, explain to me again why the milk. One, you brought me milk. 2, it's got a gold top, and 3, it's when I poured it in my coffee, it's got a very creamy edge to it. It's not normal, should we say? It's not normal. It tastes delicious.
It's not normal milk. No. Well, like I said, I was planning on bringing you a cap and whatnot, but that's not ready, unfortunately.
I can't make coffee with the cap either.
No, exactly. You can't eat coffee. You can't
and
drink.
I've got Explorer Coffee's pink piss-taking one that you gave me on. Anyway.
It suits you, though. It adds to your complexion. So basically, the milk I brought you, which you've got in your coffee, and I've just topped up in my hot chocolate, it's from a dairy farm that sells raw milk, where my other half works, which we're looking at sort of how can we take the business forward and whatnot. So I've been selling that milk, which is raw milk, so straight out of the cow into a tank and straight into the bottles you got there. So I've been taking it up to London with the farmer that owns it and runs it and selling it up in London. And people are starting to realise that actually the more processing of the food and the more processing of everything isn't actually needed, and it's not necessarily healthy for you. So a lot of the people, we've got people come in, they'll take like 20, 30 litres of the stuff, take it home, freeze it, and then they've got 6 months milk. I chat to a few people about why why are you particularly buying it, and they say it's because it's more healthy for you. It's not been processed. It's straight from the animal. It's healthy. It's good for you almost.
Will you pull that mic down just slightly? Slightly. There you go. Yeah, cool, perfect. But no, that's more than slightly. I was flicking back up.
I was going to say it does flick back up a little bit.
What was I going to say to you? Yeah. So that in that bottle is exactly the same as if I went to the cow and squeezed it into my coffee myself. Nothing's happened between apart from storage.
Exactly. That's why it's got a short shelf life, because it's not processed, it's not heat treated or whatever. But if you're drinking a litre every couple of days, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. Or you, as I said, or you can freeze it, or you can store it for a couple of days and then open it and use it within sort of 2-3 days. It's fine. But yeah, that is straight from the cow. It's a Jersey and Guernsey herd, so it's the traditional sort of brown, golden cows. You'd call them ginger, to be fair, if you were picking a colour. Anyway, yeah, to be fair, the steak that I brought you as well. I mean, that is the way that like Forces Farming is going. It's a farming company. It's not a recruitment company. It's not a training company. It's not processing people for organisations to pay. It's a business that someone can come and work in and work with and train with, etc., etc. And part of it will be working with dairies like that producing milk, and you can leave at the end of the day. If you want to, if it's a paid placement, you can be paid, and you walk away with milk and meat and stuff like that. So
it does taste delicious.
It does, delicious. And because it's gold top, like you mentioned, it's about 6% fat, but that's fat that you can process, you can eat. You can absorb. It's not going to turn into fat. It's going to be used for energy and burnt off. If you Google raw milk, like sports recovery and stuff like that, you'll find a lot of athletes talk about raw milk and the nutrition that's in it and the protein and everything, the calcium and whatnot. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a scientist, but that is like an energy drink, for example.
You are triggering all the vegans. All of the vegans, triggering them all.
But
you can't say animal products are good for you. You can't say it.
I know.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about with all your science? Don't come in here with all your science.
I can only say what I know, and that is good for you. And people agree. People buy it and stuff. And
they sort that out first, pissing me off.
No, that's all right. It's all right. It's probably going to be all right there. Let's just go. I'm slipping down the chair as well. No, there you go. Sit down. That's all right, isn't it? Is that good? Yeah. Keep an eye on the levels. So I said I wouldn't touch the mic.
No, you're booming. No, it's fine. No, it's fine.
No, I'm slipping down the chair.
A perfectionist.
What you need is a comfy sofa.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think because it's very formal. We're sitting. Do you know? So that's
but it's a risk.
So if we're going all over the place, like that's one thing I learned when I did my previous career, was like how you interact with people. So you and me talking like this face to face that's why people turn this way, or why you sit staggered and stuff like that.
No, but there's a
Not that you're making me feel uncomfortable.
I know what you're saying. Not yet. I know what you're saying, right? But there's a risk there. Is that the more informal you are in your posture, the less attention you pay to your words.
Yeah, true.
I have a thing with my headphones, right?
Yeah.
If I take my headphones off and try and do a podcast, that I hate it. Because when my headphones go on, that is, okay, Hugh, you need to concentrate what you're saying now. There's people listening. You can't go talking like you do to other people.
You could sit on a sofa with...
You've got to be careful.
No, that's true.
So if you're on a sofa, man, stuff can get wild. In the same way it does if I'm drinking. It's the same thing. You get loose, don't you?
You
the
don't
next
drink
thing
on
you're slagging
podcasts,
everybody off and you're telling people about your sex life and it's all sorts of... and then you walk out the studio and you're single.
As I say, we've been going, about 6 minutes now and we're already talking about sex. That's great. That was fantastic. But anyway, so the milk's good for you. It's healthy. That could probably be good for that as well. And the steak is from an animal that my other half bought back in November. Reared it up over the winter. He spent his winter grazing, wandering around with his mates. Spring, wandering around, growing, getting heavier and heavier. And when he was up to weight, we decided that was it. Thanks. But, this is what we're doing. Farming is producing food. So we sold off, no, we didn't sell it, sorry, but we gave it to friends basically and things like that. And it's just nice to follow something from start to finish sort of thing. So I thought, well, we can't really have a barbecue tonight. It's still frozen, but it's, there you go. Enjoy it tomorrow. Let me know how it tastes. There you go.
I'll have it tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Definitely. But next time you come up, we should...
we'll have a barbecue.
Yeah, but we've got Mike. Have you heard of Mikey's Meats?
No.
Really? You know Mike Valance?
Yeah.
He is the most extraordinary barbecue artist.
No.
Barbecue artist ever. He goes on courses, mate.
I didn't know that.
He's been on retreats away where he goes with Pucker Jen, barbecue experts, and he does courses in barbecue. I'm telling you, you never tasted anything like it. He's about 10 minutes down the road from you.
I need to get him some meat.
He's got about 50 barbecues, all does different things. Mate, you don't get in between him and his barbecue. Honest to God, he's a ninja.
I'll bring him half a cow to him.
Yeah.
Just let you turn it with half a cow. There you are, mate. Enjoy.
Love that, mate.
Every barbecue going.
Love that,
that'd be fantastic.
Mikey's Meats, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's it. It's about enjoyment. People enjoy food, and if you're gonna eat less meat, know where it comes from and know how it was reared and stuff like that. Don't just, pick up cheap stuff from wherever it comes and so on and so forth. Have a think, and that's like the whole ethos going forward with the company. Really, is that it's just let's say regenerative, food producing company, because that's what Forces Farming is, and I want people to be on the journey with that and eventually get to the point where we've got Forces Farming products in sort of supermarkets or somewhere, or that's where the opportunity is in terms of actually we're producing food and we can label it like that, and people it could potentially sort of drive consumer behaviour really. Actually I'm choosing that product because it's supporting veterans getting into agriculture. Great. We'll take a percentage
and it's sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take percentage of the profits and bang them into the charity. It's a self-funding model, that's the thing. Because I'm conscious, there's charitable funding. Yourself, it's gone down by 85% or something. So there's no point me going around saying, "Can I have some charity money? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that?" Whereas if I can start a business producing food that people want, you're producing a commodity, and then part of the profits will go into funding the whole Forces Farming program. It's self-funding, and everyone has to eat in some respects. Just choose where you get it from and how it's produced, basically. So.
Can we come on to the subject of regenerative farming and also, that as one, and the way that farming and the agriculture industry, livestock industry is being labelled at the moment?
Yeah.
Rightly or wrongly in some areas it's hard at the moment, right, to tell. I'm as much in the dark as anyone else.
Yeah.
It's hard at the moment to tell how bad agriculture, livestock farming, that farming is for the environment, for example, or how harmful that food is for you, which I don't believe at all, for you as a person, as opposed to, like, for example, the the vegan diet or vegetarian diet or non-meat diet, right? You're a farmer and you're around a lot of farmers a lot of the time. How's that being perceived? What's the feeling on that side of the fence?
So you could probably split that excuse me, you probably split that into, let's say, sort of almost sort of four answers, if that makes sense, in terms of the producing food part of it, and let's say the animal agriculture and how that's perceived. It's interesting that you asked that, because as you said then, you're in the dark. And that's how I think a lot of things are. So there's the element of communication from the industry out, talking about what they're doing and what carbon they're capturing and how the things actually work on the environmental side. So there's a communication part that I think needs to improve. But then you get into the whole sort of discussions of diets and things like that. Is the regenerative, you mentioned something about earlier, it's sustainable. Sustainable is fine, but at the moment, just carrying on as we are, consuming the diesel, consuming the fertilizer and minerals and everything that's mined wherever, shipping them up here, producing them, making them into fertilizer, and then chucking that on the crops, is sustainable for a while, but it's burning a lot of fossil fuels, and that's the element of agriculture that needs to reduce its emissions. And that's where the whole idea of regenerative agriculture comes from. So if you've got a field, let's say when I was driving up here, for argument's sake, if you take the rugby pitch, that's a field of grass. It's not the same as it being eaten by cows because it's not producing food, but it's grass, it's growing, it's photosynthesizing, it's taking carbon dioxide, producing oxygen, and it's putting organic matter down in the soil. So basically, as if you imagine the rugby pitch, as it dries up, when we've got no rain, cracks appear, that grass plant puts out so many different kinds of roots into the root system looking for moisture. As soon as it rains, let's say 50% of those roots will die, and then they just become organic matter in the ground, and it's basically just brown, helps the soil, feeds the worms, etc., and so on and so forth. But because that's mown every week, for example, it doesn't have the chance to be strong enough to expel all those roots and bring them back in. Whereas if you started putting cattle on there, they would eat the grass down to where they wanted to, and then they'd move on to another bit. That plant would then have a chance to grow maybe for 4-6 weeks perhaps, as the cows have moved past it. But as they're moving over it, for example, moving past it, they're pissing, shitting, doing what they do, trampling. So they're pushing the plant that's growing above the ground with their hooves, they're pushing that into the soil. A similar idea as the roots going out, dying off, looking for moisture. They're pushing plant material into the soil. That's feeding worms, that's feeding bugs, it's potentially disturbing other seeds that might come back next year, or disturbing wildflowers or things like that. And moving cattle across it like that, their manure and things like that is feeding the soil microbes and down to the smallest, tiniest bacteria that is the bottom of the food web. So to say that we can live in a world that has no animal agriculture and all animal agriculture is bad, you can't say that if you understand how the soil web works, basically. Because that manure is in a soluble format. It's been through a ruminant, which is a cow, sheep, whatever. It's been through an animal. The nutrient in that plant that the animal doesn't need comes out in a form that the roots can absorb, rather than taking it out of a bag and throwing it on the field every year. The idea of bringing in things like cattle is putting basically out the other end what the plants need. And that might be the plants that are there. They might be ploughed up or cultivated, and then the following crop might use the nutrients from the animal. But it's the idea of bringing animals into the system to feed the soil, and then at the same time making sure the soil is always covered. That's part of the regenerative cycle.
Covered?
Yeah. So if you imagine, where are we? July. So, for example, if they're going to harvest a crop in August, you could technically plough that field up, leave it as bare soil over the winter, and then plant a crop into it in the spring. There's no rules that say you can't do that. It's bad husbandry, because then you've got soil runoff, you've got nutrients getting into watercourses, then you're not polluting the watercourse, but you've got soil runoff, you've got nutrients running out of your field if it's ploughed over the winter, for example. So the idea being that instead of doing something like that, you would just have a crop growing with roots in the soil that's binding the soil together. It might be like winter food for birds. It might be, a winter crop that's going to then be destroyed in the spring and then used to feed the next crop, so on and so forth. But making sure that the soil is always sort of covered, basically.
So you plough the field, leave it exposed to the winter, or for any time, you get all the goodness from it is going to start going over time.
Yeah, basically.
Because it's exposed. Whereas with
now that's not everywhere. It's the same with everything. You know, it works for some farms. It doesn't work for other farms. If you look at the other side of that, organic farmers, for example, who generally have more weed pressure and things like that, they have to plough. But that's just choosing a tool in a list of options that might work for you on your farm, sort of thing. So everywhere is different. So to go out and say you shouldn't be ploughing, you all have to have animals, etc., 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 isn't a solution for everyone. And it's something that's in discussion at the moment. So everyone says farming's changing and this, that, and the other, but unless you know what's going on down to the sort of that sort of kind of detail, it all looks from the outside that, well, they want to plant more trees, or they want, to plant more whatever pollinator mixes, or this, that, and the other. And to understand the whole network of farming isn't easy. But just to say we shouldn't be eating animals, we need to eat more vegetables, isn't really a rounded argument, if that makes sense. Yeah,
well, there's two. You've got the ethical side of it, and you got the sustainability side of it. But is there a way to regeneratively farm without animals, without using animals?
Yeah, you could incorporate, what they call cover crops and things like that. And there are sources of fertilizer. So, for example, I worked for quite a large renewable energy company. They were producing biomethane. It was going straight into the grid. And then the carbon dioxide that came off that, for example, was going into the drinks industry for beers and so on and so forth. They produce as a byproduct basically the same as a cow manure, but it's not been through an animal, it's not involved in animal agriculture. And that, for example, you could use as an organic fertilizer, and that would be considerably, would have a considerable impact on the yield and things like that, and the quality of the produce if you were producing vegetables with it, for example. But yeah, no, you don't have to, you haven't got to incorporate animals. I'm a bit biased because I love cows, but that's just me. But what the livestock also brings to the table is, for example, if I wanted to get into farming and I thought, right, I'm going to start growing crops, vegetables or something like that. If you look, so let's say an acre costs £10,000. If you then want to grow vegetables on an acre, you've got to put in quite a lot of investment. You'd probably be around, if you're doing a lot of the labour yourself with seeds and compost and everything, and the back-breaking work, making like vegetable beds and this, that, and the other, you'd either have to get a machine to do it, and you'd be turning the soil over, or you'd have to do a lot of work. But you'd be, let's say, round figures, 30 probably to 40 grand an acre. I'm only sort of random figures here, but it's an example. Whereas if I wanted to put some sheep on an acre, you could buy 5 sheep probably for 500 quid, and you could rent the acre for maybe, if you had to pay more for it, it might be 150 quid or 100 quid an acre for the year. But then you've got animals on there that are eating the grass, turning it into food. Now, yes, you're not going to have the same return, but you haven't got the same investment up front. So the idea of actually having more livestock being farmed properly, if you like, or regeneratively on land that currently doesn't use livestock is a good business opportunity for people that want to get into farming. Or investing in livestock is a lot less than investing in a combine harvester, a seed drill, fertilizer, sprays, land rent. It's just, whereas you can find bits of land, acres here, acres there, and you could have 5 or 6 sheep on it. You could rear 5 or 6 lambs and then kill them at the end of the year. They might cost you, let's say, £30-40 a lamb. You rent the field, £100 a year, and then the lamb at the end of it's probably worth 100 quid, butchered. So suddenly you've turned 30 quid into 100 quid, and you've not really done much. You've watched lambs grow eating grass, and suddenly you've got 6 lambs that can go in the butcher, and half a lamb is quite a lot of meat. So it helps a lot with younger people coming into the industry that perhaps want to start with livestock and do it that way. And that then just brings up, then after that, all you need to do is market it and start to talk to local people and get it processed by a butcher and whatnot to an end product, and say, right, I'm going to start selling my meat. I've got it all, it's got all the certificates, it's got all the health and safety and trading standards and all that. But I can go to a pub, for example, and say, do you want to buy half a lamb? That's doable on a weekend if if it's just you, for example. Whereas, the vegetable side, you've got so many inputs and quite a lot higher risk and a lot more work, obviously for more return, but depends what you want to do, really. And if you see some of the fields and some of the areas that are purely vegetable production. If you take carrots, for example, so it's pretty wet at the moment. Carrots are being harvested. So again, take the rugby pitch. If that was a field full of carrots...
Mate, I tell you, if that was a field full of carrots, flipping heck, some people would kick off at this rugby club. They'd go mental. They would go crazy. Honest to God.
Precious about
we should plan some for next season. That would amuse me. It would amuse me. But after the food bars.
Yeah, we'll have an 8-hour garden out. Yeah, we get growing something. No, so if you imagine if that field was, like we cancelled the rugby patch because the pitch is waterlogged. So if that field was waterlogged, but the person you were supplying said, "I'm sorry, the supermarket needs 10 tons of carrots," you've got to go out and harvest those carrots, even if it's pissing down with rain, even if you're making a mess damaging the soil, because you've got a contract to fulfill. So actually, suddenly, just switching to vegetables, it doesn't suit all of the UK. I don't know what it is. I think 60% of the UK is unable to grow crops anyway, because it's hillland, upland, grassland. It's near rivers, etc. But and it's the same with Brussels sprouts, cabbage, anything that's in the field. Potatoes and stuff. You can't turn around to the supermarket and go, "Look, sorry, it's raining, it's too wet. We can't take the machine out in the field." The lorries are coming, the contract's there. You've got to supply potatoes, whatever, carrots, cauliflower, whatever, when they want it, sort of thing. So suddenly you've gone from actually a nice green field with a few animals in it to maybe 6 or 7 tractors driving around in the mud, taking mud out on the road because the carrots are going 2 miles down the road. And it's a completely different idea of doing it, but there are people looking at doing smaller scale vegetables, but along the sort of no dig lines. And actually you can get into something called it's basically called a CSA. I can't remember what it stands for, but you for example, you pay a monthly fee to that person producing the vegetables, and you get your box of vegetables or your box of meat every month or every week or however many times you want it, but you've paid for the next 6 months. So you're not going around Tesco's or wherever, or Sainsbury's or Morrison's.
You're on about the consumer. Okay,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, HelloFresh do that now.
Yeah, there you go. It's the same sort of thing. But a lot of smaller people are starting to do it sort of direct. So you're funding their startup business. So if I went round, for example,
direct to the farm.
Yeah, direct to the farm. Yeah, exactly.
I was literally looking 2 weeks ago because I want to start eating healthier meat. I was looking for a meat supplier. I want a regular meat supplier. But to be honest, the ones I found a bit steep, and they were big companies. I don't want that.
No.
I want local. Send me some flipping steaks.
Yeah, exactly.
Like on a regular bit, I would happily pay for that.
Yeah.
Because I look at this. Sorry, I'm jumping in here. I look at this. I'm probably going to pay more for those steaks than I would in Tesco's, right? But they're healthier. And the other thing is, when I go to Tesco's, I don't just buy fucking steaks. I go down all the other aisles and I fill my basket with crap.
Yeah,
I'm saving money. Honest to God.
You are. You start shopping for what you need, and you're exactly right. And this is one thing we've been looking at doing. Is when we get the farm, as in a location, will be exactly that. We'll be starting meat boxes and things like that, because yes, we're limited on shipping distance, but if you can say to someone, I'll tell me what you want to spend, tell me what you want, if you want mince, if you want chops, if you want lamb, if you want chicken, and we'll plan that for your month, and then we'll deliver it either, or either come and pick it up.
Do you know farms do that now?
Yeah,
do you know farms around you do that now?
I could find some. Yeah.
I am in. I am all the way in. I'm telling you.
There's a friend of mine. He's Northampton direction, but anyway, there's a network. We'll have a look. But there's some good networks popping up that. I know there's one called My Local Larder on Instagram. You can have a look at that, and that's exactly what they want to do: is link up local producers with consumers. And you can go, actually, that's great. I've found 5 different shops and I've ordered it. And it runs through this small sort of startup business that's just helping direct traffic, basically. And that's similar to what I'm doing, really.
That could be the answer to this problem where all the small shops are disappearing. Yeah. There's hardly any butchers anywhere anymore.
Exactly.
Trying to find a butcher is rare. There's one in Warwick.
Yeah.
There's one in Warwick. There's one in Leamington. There's one I know of in Chelmsford. Yeah. There used to be loads of them.
I know.
This kind of thing could be the answer to getting your healthy food again, getting decent food, and buying local. Because right now, the only barrier to that is lack of options and accessibility.
Yeah, exactly.
There's Lidl's, there's Aldi's, there's Tesco's, there's Sainsbury's, there's Waitrose, there's Flip. I don't go to Waitrose, I can't afford it.
So
there's stuff everywhere.
I don't know if you saw recently, but the Jeremy Clarkson did an article. I put it on my story on Instagram. I think it's the Sunday Times. I'm not sure. Sunday Telegraph. I don't read the papers. That's my problem. Anyway, he does his article every Sunday, and he'd written down there, like in particular on the animal welfare side, which is so interesting. That why do we as UK farmers, why are we supposed to follow all of these welfare standards of making sure animals have got X, Y, and Z and their space and so on and so forth, and they're tracked and traceability. When the government can go, well, we can just import stuff from Australia as well. So, well, you can, but there's a reason why you can buy something halfway around the world and it's the same price, if not cheaper, than what we can produce it. And that's the bit that people don't understand is, and this is where forces farming is different. Is it's about the people. If you could go to a farm and talk to the man or woman or farmer, whoever, who's produced that food, they're proud of it. He'd happily tell you about all the environmental side and the environmentally work he's doing, as well as how proud he is of the beef or chicken or milk or whatever he's producing. Because that's it. Because it's not. It's the people at the end of the line, really, and that's what I think a lot of it gets missed along the lines. Is it's shortening that sort of link to the consumer, basically. A friend of mine, he started a butchery down in Battersea during lockdown. He decided that was the bit that, like you were saying, that was missing, was a local butcher, and him and his mate started it up. It's called the Butcher's Table. I think it's SW11. It's a cool place. And they age. If you want some steaks, I'd recommend ordering from them. They've like 50-day dry aged steaks, racks of beef like the length of your table is. Yeah, shout out to those guys. That's some good.
What was their name?
The Butcher's Table. I think the Butcher's Table SW11 or something like that. You can't miss them. And it's interesting while we're talking about butchery and things like that. So I was chatting with an I think he's ex-Rifles. I forget. I'm terrible with badges and what someone's done in the past because I'm a farmer. I don't know. Talking about farming, yes, but anyway. So he came out. He left. I think he same as everyone. Did a job. Didn't like it. Didn't enjoy it. Finished up basically going into a butchery. So there's a farm in Henley-on-Thames called English Farm. They're basically, it's English Longhorn cattle. They have the whole process under their control from start to finish, calving all the way through to butchery. They're looking at on-farm slaughter, if that's allowed by the government, so on and so forth. There's rules, you can't do that. But basically they take they take the beef from calf all the way through to butchery. And the veteran who's working there now is basically, I think he's been there, I'd have to forgive me, I've got it written down in the truck, but it's like 5 years or so. And he's now at the point where he's a butcher, he knows what he's doing, he can butcher a whole animal into steaks, and they're looking for someone else. So basically the farmers come to me and said, look, we were talking about purchasing cattle from him a while ago, we didn't get the farm, etc. But anyway, we kept in touch, and he said, look, I'm interested in developing someone on the butchery side, but also on the farm side. And what I found now is people come direct and say, I'm looking for someone with the right attitude, with the right skill set, who can learn, but who is also open to doing bits on the farm, a bit of butchery and things like that. And crikey, if you were a butcher, you're in a dying trade basically. There's not many butchers around and things like that. And so it's those kind of opportunities that come up through connections and through.
Well, hang on, dying trade or a trade where there's demand but not supply.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, no.
Dying trade, you don't want to go into that.
No, it's no. You're right. Actually, that's
wrong phrase.
That's a wrong phrase, mate. Definitely. Yeah, it's a trade that's got no supply of people coming in. You're right. Actually, it's not a dying trade because you can't automate butchery. Can you not? Mate, that's a whole other discussion. We'll get onto farming automation and technology in a bit.
Why can't you automate? Why can't you automate butchery?
I mean, you've obviously seen this. The design of fake meat and this, that, and the other. And you can print a steak. Well, you can't print a steak because the steak is made up.
I haven't seen this. Explain. Go on. I've heard about it.
So fake meat is basically a kind of vegetable
synthetic meat.
Synthetic
fake
meat. Well, fake meat's the company name.
Is it?
Yeah, no, they are. They're called. I think they're called fake meat.
But it's meat,
fake
right?
Meat. Yeah, it's a meat replacement. Let's call it that. But it's made. It's got like beetroot juice in it, so the steak would bleed.
Oh, that could fuck off. It's made from plants.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like genetically reproduced or something.
No, this is it's made from plants.
For God's sake! I thought you were like test tube babies.
No, it's not like that. No, it's fake meat. It's fake. It's not fake news. It's fake meat. But no, I mean, eat what you want. I'm not in any way against anyone eating, being a vegan, being a whatever. I can't really whatever I don't really care because it all comes out of the ground somewhere along the line. So. Anyway, I have to think where I was going with that now.
We're on about automating butchery.
Automating butchery. Because that idea of, you look at a steak, you look at a roll, a fillet, for example, and it's that long and it's that thick or it's that thick. You know where you've got to cut. Yeah, you could scan it and whatever else, but you couldn't sit there and go, right, I want 500 grams, that is that much to cut off, and then bang, bang, bang. And that's just not, people are just not interested in doing that now. So for a farm to turn around and go, we got a position. It'd be paid 2.5 days in the butchery and 2.5 days on the farm. Basically, come and learn. And that for me, that's a fantastic opportunity. Crikey, if I could take up some of these opportunities that are coming up, it'd be enjoyable. But if someone wants to work in a small team, good with their hands, isn't afraid of lugging meat carcasses around and doing the butchery side of it, it's a fantastic job. You'd have work for life basically, and it'll always be changing. It's just an enjoyable place to sort of work really. But where are we going with that? What were we saying? We're talking synthetic meat and stuff like that, and you can't automate. But I was going to say to you about farm technology.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can go down there if you want. That's fine.
Go for it, mate. It's fascinating.
I mean, so we've just had 2 different agricultural shows going on. One was called Cereals Show.
I have got something I want to come back onto actually.
Yeah,
but go on.
And it was really interesting. So, for example, at the Cereals Show, they had the first UK drone crop sprayer. So basically, at the moment, they're looking at agriculture if they can start to move towards drone spraying, applying chemicals or things like that. Or
we want to get away from that, don't we? We want to get away from all that.
We do, but then it gets you down to sort of hyper-localized treatment of plants rather than... It's used massively in China, basically. And they're looking at it from an efficiency perspective. If you had 10 drones doing the same work as a machine that costs like $500,000, it's probably a bit cheap. I don't know.
Yeah, but if you look at that film, I think you put it onto it was Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground, yeah.
If you look at that, isn't the problem that America have got in a lot of their states where that the soil is just shocking?
Yeah.
Isn't that down to over fertilization, over pesticide?
Yeah. It is. You're right, but it has its place in terms of, let's say, if there's patches of weeds that only need a specific treatment, that you can start to do that rather than apply the whole field with a chemical. But one thing I was talking to them about, for example, is a farmer down in West Sussex. He's got about 2,000 acres of grass. He's got clover and he's got normal grass and he's got dock leaves. He can't blanket spray the farm because the spray to kill the dock leaves will kill the clover. Now the clover's high in nitrogen. That's good for the cow's immune system, good for putting on weight, good for feeding them. So he can't spray once. So he's basically said to me a couple of years ago, he's like, I need a drone that can fly over, and when I see either on the whatever phone or on the tablet, I see a dock leaf, I can spray it and then fly on to the next one. And he said, and eventually he said a robot will do that. I was like, well, you can do that anyway, but it's just we can't bolt everything. You're not allowed to spray with a drone at the moment. The government says it's not. You're doing bad, naughty things if you're spraying with a drone, but you're not. Because, for example, if you think, sounds silly, but like roundabouts and things like that and car parks and stuff, weed killing and stuff along the edge of the road, you would eventually probably fly a drone down there, and when it sees a weed, it would spray the weed, and it would fly around all night, basically, sort of doing the weed killing at night, rather than someone doing it in the daytime. So there are places where, but yeah, on the industrial side of agriculture, we should be focusing on using less chemicals and stuff like that. But the drone technology, for example, would give us more accuracy. But there's loads of companies using drones for scanning crops and scanning fields and looking at yields and looking at soil carbon and this. So it's a big industry, but there's nothing yet. Because I've had quite a few people. I think you've got one up there. Is it? No, unmanned air veterans. Oh, I had a chat with those guys. They're not up there. No, but yeah, they've been on. Yeah, that's it. There's one of the sponsors. Yeah, so I was chatting to those guys, and I was like, the problem with the drone industry at the moment in agriculture is a farmer will still want to go and walk out in the field. If you flew a drone over the rugby pitch and you said they quite like the rugby pitch, and it said like half of it was dying, you wouldn't sit in the rugby club and go, oh well, the drone said it's dying, so we better do something about it. You'd go out there and have a look. So, and that's the problem with farmers.
I think that would change.
I think it will as well,
because you would save time.
You would.
So they would get used to the time being saved. They'd allocate that time, that hour of walking around the pitch. It only takes 5 minutes because they're reviewing the footage, reviewing the data. They don't even have to review the footage. The fucking drone will tell them exactly where it is and go, you got a problem. Go and squirt it. Yeah. And then the other 55 minutes that they would save up, they would fill that time with other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Productive stuff.
Yeah. But you see, you've just said that like as a person that's used to looking at data and things like that, and farmers won't do that yet. It's like, oh no, I know there's weeds in that field, but I better go and have a look anyway. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah,
it's just it's not even a resistance to technology.
No,
it's one of those industries where they are. It's a culture thing, isn't it? they're 10 years behind. Like we're 10 years behind America, the UK is, in like technology and stuff. Oh, arguably not, but farmers are like 10 years behind everybody else in terms of
it's technology
automation, for example.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And rightly so in some cases. And it's a fucking art.
Yeah.
It's an art.
Yeah.
You can't just go and say one day, I'm going to be a farmer one day. No. There's generations of knowledge that you guys have that you can't simply...
No, you're exactly right. Because you see, if you take the other end of like the technology side, would be a good example, would be like robot milking. So suddenly you take out the element of someone needing to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go and milk, and then someone needs to go back in the evening and milk. Suddenly you've got a robot in there and the cow will come in when she wants to. But that system, for example, it's great. It's good. It's automated. It's probably better for the cow. But number one, you've probably lost 2 people's employment because you don't need 2 people on the farm, which is fine because it's extremely hard to find anyone that wants to get up at 4:30 in the morning, milk cows, have breakfast, do something else on the farm, and then go back and milk them in the evening, like 6 days a week or whatever, like 10 on, 2 off sort of thing. Yeah, that is massive. If anyone's listening to this and wants to fancy working in the dairy industry, let me know. They're desperate for people. But if you put the robot in the element, suddenly you've got one person who's now reviewing data and going, oh, well, why didn't cow 576 give us the normal 20 litres? She's only giving us 15. I better go out and have a look at her. And she might be walking around with like a bad foot. So she's expelling energy. Rather than making milk, she's expelling energy into fixing her lame foot, basically. So that's where data is transferred into something tangible, if you like. But unless you've got the network and the forward-thinking company and business and people in the right place, it won't happen, sort of thing. You've got to have someone that wants to sit there and go, oh, that's an anomaly in the data. I better go and look at that, rather than standing there physically every day putting cups on a cow.
Question for you. Yeah. When you said to me robot milking, I had visions in my head of like battery hens. Right. And all the cows lined up with fucking tools attached to them as getting milked. But then you said, honestly, that's what I thought, because I don't know. Yeah. I thought, well, that doesn't sound very ethical, Jeremy. Yeah. But then you said the cow will walk in when it wants to. Yeah. Right, describe this robot milking process to me. Because it did not sound bad at all. No, it sounds like flipping. What's the stereotypical name for a cow? They call
Daisy.
Daisy. It sounds like Daisy squared away. She's doing her own thing. Watch Corrie, go and get milked.
Exactly. Go and eat something, go and lie down, go and get milk. Exactly. No, so basically, if you imagine, sensitive, so it's be about, probably not quite as high as a phone box. If you put 4 phone boxes together, you get about the right sort of footprint. It fits around the cow. So the cow walks in, they've got collars around their neck, and it registers on the robot milking machine that this cow's been in actually 3 times in the last hour. She's only here to get food. So Daisy walks in going, I know that if I walk in here at some times of the day, I get a bit of food. So some cows will go round and round. They walk in and they walk in again, like, no food, I'll go around again. They walk around again. So some cows learn to try and trick the system, but the system goes, you've been milked today, you're not getting any food, walk on. Yeah, I know, it's great, isn't it?
But hang on. So
going back to the machine, if they were going to be milked, they'd walk in, the tag would register what number they are, and then literally an arm comes out underneath, 4 lasers basically position the cups, and then it goes on to the cow. And because she's being milked when she wants to, she basically stands there and she'll naturally let down the milk, and then you end up with what we got in the bottle over there. But once it's done, once you sort of stopped or whatever, the system shuts off. You'd have like filters in there and sensors in there, so if there was any sort of like temperature change in her milk, for example, it might signify that she's got an infection or something. So don't let that milk go in with the other milk.
But plus, you're looking after the cow's welfare.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the cow doing when it's not in that booth? When you say it's cutting about, is it grazing?
No, but this is the challenge, because if you want a robot, it's very difficult to put robots in fields, if that makes sense. So there are systems where they take the milking parlours to the cows in the fields rather than making the cows come to the milking parlour. But cows have done that for generations and years and years and years. They're used to. That's why the Holstein black and white cow. That's why she was invented. Basically, was to walk and produce milk, and that was what.
So where's the cow when it's not in the?
So in a robot situation, she's normally eating grass or eating silage near the farm, either very closely, if she can walk out. Yeah, in a paddock.
So not like locked up.
No. Or they are indoors. That's the thing, because sometimes it will only work if they're around the robot, and the robot might be in a building. So some of them might be housed more than others.
But that would be seasonal, would it?
Yeah,
or cows milked all year round.
The thing is, it depends on this. This is again what I was saying, like with the ploughing and stuff. Because everywhere's different. For example, you can have a farm where say it was 150 acres, like, you know, that's 150 for rugby pitches, whatever. If they could access the farm like at all times, if they're in a valley and they could walk out the farm into the grass fields, eat the grass, mill about, chat to their mates, wander back down, go into the shed with a robot, milk themselves, wander back out. That works. It's when you get to the more commercial systems where they've got, for argument's sake, 400 or 500 cows to milk, and they can't all be around wandering round, then they need to stay basically together in a shed. And that's when you end up with the buildings that have got like cubicles and things like that. But at the end of the day, they're in there, they're lying on mattresses. It's not like they're unhappy. They're eating, they're breathing, they're healthy. It's not like they're cooped up, chained, and, you know, their ankles are whatever. It's not like you see in the videos. And the silly thing is...
Well, it is like you see in the videos at those stupid fucking farms that treat their animals like that.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, exactly, which is what happens if you don't know where your food comes from. You know, a good friend of mine said to me the other day, he said, here's a question for someone. He said, you can't let them think...
Is someone we both know?
No. He's another chap. He's helped me a lot with horses farming, actually. So you can't think about the answer. You've got to give me an answer straight away. And he said, how much does a litre of milk cost in the shop?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, what, 90p?
See, people don't know.
Oh.
So, but this links back to like knowing where your food comes from. It's about 75p basically. But this links back to if that litre of milk there would cost you 90p, well, actually, that 20 or 25p of that profit that you didn't think about has gone to charity. And he sort of said to me, he said, that's the element that you've got with like forces farming, is actually you're producing something. It could cost £1 a litre, for argument's sake.
That's a really good point. I never look at them.
No,
prices of milk.
exactly. You never look. So those what you call staple things in your diet, like milk, butter, potatoes, bread, you don't pay as close attention to as a piece of meat. So therefore, there's two elements. Number one, if you're selling milk, for example, you could sell it for that bottle there, for example, sells for £2 a litre. But that is, you know, straight from the cow, straight to you, sort of thing. But you know where it's come from. You know, she said, "Oops,
you've banged that about 4 times."
I did. I know. If I can put my hands together. But you know, Daisy's had a good life and she's been happy. But yeah, the other side of it, you know, going away from the robot side, it is better welfare, but it's a lot of data management and knowing the animals. But it's good. You know, it's high welfare. They can go in, they can milk themselves when they want to. They're not in a routine. If they don't want to go in for a day, two, whatever, they don't have to. And then we get on. Oh no. If we talk about dairy farms, we have to talk about like stealing the baby calves and the other argument that everyone's got.
Well, we will come on to it. We didn't have to. We mentioned.
No, I know, but I just thought
the thing is, mate, is that I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm learning.
True. No one else might listen to us.
Well, no, but I'm under no illusion. You know, there's animal cruelty. I'm under no illusion it happens, right? I'm also under no illusion that the whole vegan versus not vegan. You got the animal agriculture versus the
it'd be like
animal agriculture argument. There are pros and cons to both sides, right? Yeah. Like, you don't really. It's hard for me to understand and sort of and form my ideas around it, my opinions around it, without speaking to people who understand it, like you do. And again, we're not fucking scientists as well, right? No. But you know, you've got experience in doing it,
and as well seeing it. If you can see what you're buying, you know that's a huge part of it these days. You know, social media. There's a really good account on Instagram called Cups on Cows, and it's this family that farm. Seriously, where they're milking cups. That's what you put on the cow. But it's this. It's
two cows, 1 cup.
4. What? I was gonna say. I'd think then. No, 2 cows, 8 cups. There you go. Because they got 4 teats, mate. No way. No, but do you know what I mean? But there's no. They're not hiding anything. They are the industry. It's a family business. They're building up, growing up, bring up a young kid, and it's just so nice to see it. But you start to see who's behind your food, who's behind it, because it is a it's an economy at the end of the day. You know, the rural economy without farms, you could close your gates and not do anything, but things are just run wild.
Yeah, but when you start throwing in, like, you were talking earlier about things being profitable when they're young, someone wants to start a farm, and you were talking about certain things about making it really, meat, making it profitable. When you start banging about the money topic, then that's chucked in as an argument against it. Oh, it's all money and it's at the expense of the animals. But here's like this, the crunch with it. It is in the farmers in an animal agriculture. For any farmer who actually wants to succeed, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it is absolutely in their interests to have healthy animals.
Yeah.
Healthy animals is in their interests, because if the animals aren't healthy, whatever they're producing, it could be chickens producing eggs, it could be cows producing milk, it could be sheep for the slaughter. If the animals aren't healthy, they have to deal with illnesses and ailments in the animal, which costs money. They have to deal with poor quality meat, which means it's less likely to sell, or they get less money for it. And, well, they're the two things. Less quality product, and they fucking cost them money.
And 90% of the time, you break even, because you don't count in your time. Geez, like that steak that's over there, if me and my other half, if we'd put in our time into that, you'd never make anything, sort of thing. But that's it. It's a way of life. It's just, it is what it is. The
subject I wanted to come back to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, go on. No, I was just going to say it's about there's people behind it as well. But it is about just knowing where stuff came from. Go on, you go.
The thing I want to come back to is about sustainability between animal agriculture and what's the opposite of animal agriculture? What is it? What do you call it?
Arable farming. Basically.
Arable farming.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So is this sustainability between the two? Not sustainability. The amount of resources you use. Yeah. So there is an argument that is regularly made that the resources needed, natural resources needed to produce X amount of X amount of energy, flipping protein, flipping carbs, whatever, from animal agriculture, right, is more than what arable farming uses. So therefore, arable farming is less costly on the environment than, I know we touched on this slightly, we didn't really, that it's less costly than animal agriculture. Is that the case or not? Because you've been quite honest in some regards. I mean, not everything being in the animal agriculture.
The thing is, if you take arable farming, for example, in terms of crops,
I wasn't insinuating you'd ever lie, mind. I just meant what I meant was some of the stuff you said earlier. It isn't. You haven't wholly gone out to say no. The animal agriculture is much better than flipping vegan side. You've actually said they're quite equal in some things. So which is admirable because it's a really difficult subject to broach, especially from your side.
Yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, if you look at if I answer it, just go a different way around. If you look at producing like a kilogram of protein, what is the best way to do that? Is you have to do some sort of cultivations or something to the soil to get the crop to grow. So if we go on two paths, for example, like livestock and the crop or the vegetable sort of side, if you look at the animal agriculture side, you've got an animal that let's say if there was no one around tomorrow, cows, sheep, whatever broke out, they'd be grazing. I love coming back to the rugby pitch. I don't know why. They'd be grazing the rugby pitch because it's grass. So they would be turning that grass that we can't eat, which grows everywhere. We got the climate for it, as you can see. It's July and it's pissing down with rain and it's warm. So we can grow grass. We can grow copious amounts of grass, same as New Zealand and places further down, Brazil or whatever. So there is an animal there that can basically turn a source of protein, grass, if you like, into a source of digestible protein, which we can eat. That cow could live. You could put a cow out on a rugby pitch, and it could live there all year. You just have to move it around and make sure it had enough grass to eat. That can do that all on its own. And then, lo and behold, I know you can't always go back and say everything was right, but someone killed the cow and went, we can eat that. We can put that on the fire and cook it and eat it. So suddenly, it might have been a zebra, buffalo, whatever, caribou, I don't know. But that process of going, you're eating grass, we can't eat the grass, versus if you've got the same rugby pitch, you look at that and go, right, well, I need to take something out of that soil to grow something else. So I need to either move the soil and put a seed in it, and then the soil's probably not right, so I'm going to have to fertilise it. And then there's a risk of disease because it's been wet and warm, so I better put a chemical on it to stop an infection in the leaves, for example. oh shit, now it's got dry and warm and we're about to harvest it, and suddenly there's a bug trying to eat the grains. We're going to spray it with a chemical. Right now we're coming and harvest it with a machine and so on and so forth. They are two very, very different ways of producing basically protein. Either put an animal in an area eating something that grows very, very widely and very naturally in the UK, or you have to cultivate it. And it doesn't matter if you're eating aubergines, courgettes, whatever. That soil has to be moved. That carbon is released from the soil as soon as you move it, an element. Whereas, yes, the cow stands there, it's producing methane, but methane lasts in the atmosphere for about 10 years before it's turned into carbon dioxide and then reabsorbed into the plant. So it's a cycle. She or he or whatever's eating plants that are consuming the carbon dioxide which comes from the methane that she's producing.
But going back on the arable farming, you were saying the carbon's getting released because
so as soon as you move soil and you expose...
Why do you need to move the soil? Explain that to me.
So the idea being that if you went out into that grass and put let's say a load of wheat, for example, if you wanted to grow a loaf of bread or whatever, if you didn't move that soil and somehow destroy the grass, that grass would outcompete the wheat that's growing, and then when you come to harvest it, you'll have a load of grass seeds in the wheat.
You mean turn it, you mean plough it,
exactly.
Plough it, turn
move
it, you mean
move it,
yeah. Okay, yeah.
But I mean, you can go through with a disc, and it will slice into a crop, for example, and it will put the seed in, it will close it up, and it will hardly move any soil. But you still have then an element of crops growing around it that are a competition. So this is where, like on that Kiss the Ground movie, they talk about the chemical Roundup or glyphosate. So if you wanted to get a good crop of wheat out of that rugby pitch, for example...
Phil Eales is going to go mental. Let's choose something else. I'm joking. He looks after that pitch.
There you go. Yeah. So you'd go out there with a weed killer, basically, and you'd kill all the grass, and then you could plant a crop of wheat or whatever, or courgettes or aubergines into it in theory, and they'll grow because the grass is all dead. But at the same time as you spraying to kill the grass, you're killing things in the soil that are beneficial. So that's the whole argument of actually, and if this is a good friend of mine in the Cotswolds, this is what he approaches, or how he approaches it, is basically you move the soil as little as possible, because as soon as you move the soil, basically the soil says, I'm exposed, I want something to grow, and they generally grow weeds, for example. So like a molehill, for example, would grow. Chances are in a couple of years you'd end up with a dock leaf growing there, for example. Oh. So seeds, like weed seeds, can stay in the soil for like 25, 30 years and not grow. And as soon as you pull a plough through like a rugby pitch, you're exposing those seeds to the surface that might have been there for 25 years and not grown. And then all of a sudden they go, I've got a bit of moisture, it's nice and sunny, I'll start growing. So moving the soil generates sort of like weeds that can start to grow because the soil wants to cover itself. But yeah, you can do it different ways, but you've got to in some way kill the crop that's there. So you have to do something to it, and that might just be cultivating it or moving it and beating it up enough, basically, that it will die. But pretty much you need to do something to it to be able to basically ensure that the vegetable or the crops or the arable or wheat, barley or whatever grows, better than the crop that wasn't there before, basically. So,
can you mix animal? So let's take the rugby pitch for example, animal agriculture on there with a crop growing in the same position.
Yeah. So again, the same chap down in the Cotswolds, a friend of mine, Ed, over the winter, he plants his wheat, for example, in, let's say, October into November. As that's growing through the winter, it gets to sort of, 20, 25 centimetres tall. What he does over the winter is graze it with sheep. So they eat all of that winter growth, and then it comes around to the springtime, and the plant says, well, I haven't got all this other growth, I'll start growing new, clean, fresh, disease-free leaves. So he's then starting to save a lot of money on chemicals and inputs from that side. But that's also while feeding lambs over the winter on the winter-grown wheat that he's then going to combine in the spring or in the summer, basically. So you can do it in the same field. It's just a different way of thinking, and that's one of the things that...
Can you not... Aren't there crops you can do it at the same time? Isn't that one of the things that they did in Kiss the Ground, one of the farms there?
Probably. It depends on where it was in the world.
But they had some, I think they got a much wider variety.
Yeah, like millet and things like that. You can cut it and it will keep coming back, and cut it and it keep coming back. And chicory is another one, you see. So chicory has actually got like anti-parasitic properties in it. So do you remember when you
chicory?
Yeah. So you get it in supermarkets. It's in a different format that it grows in the field, but
never even heard of it.
It's like a pink. It looks like a pink lettuce, but it's a bit thicker, whiter stems. But and the same, when you used to run around as a kid and you'd get that sticky stuff that you'd grab out the hedge and stick on someone's back. So that is I know Nick Goldsmith will know this, but I can't remember. But that's like a natural toxic flush. So if animals eat that, it will basically flush their entire system. If they had worms, for example, they'd go and pick that out of the hedge and go, I need to flush the system, diarrhea for a couple of days. But that also works for us and things like that. So there's all these natural elements to, if you can feed animals healthy or healthier crops or wider diversity, then actually they're growing even better and even healthier than using any chemicals. So chicory you could cut and keep cutting again, and then every 6 weeks, for example, if you fed that to the animals, they'd fill up with chicory. But the anti-parasitic properties that are in chicory leaves basically kill all the worms naturally. And it's the same. So willow is probably growing everywhere around here. You see like weeping willow and stuff like that. That's got the base chemical for aspirin in it. So cattle and sheep will chew the leaves and the bark as a natural painkiller. So if you ever, see them, cows browsing hedges and things like that, then they're generally picking up something because they might not be feeling 100%. So there's so much you can do, and the environmental side of it is, it's like it just fits together. Crops grow better on the shit that comes out of a cow. It's not
natural.
It is. It's natural for them to work both together, and you can't just open all the gates and let all the cows out and say we'll just they'll just be wild, because you end up with inbreeding. So here's a question. So a friend of mine up in Yorkshire, have you heard about them talking about rewilding and everything should just go back to nature in some areas? So his father up north, he basically approached the council and said, right, I'm going to look at rewilding like 100 acres of my farm. For it to be truly rewilded, you need to close the footpaths, because you can't have people walking through with dogs and stuff if it's rewilded. That's not rewilded. And if an animal dies in the river in the middle, what do we do about it? Because it's rewilded. You can't go in. It's going back to nature. And he said, but by the way, that little stream, feeds whatever river that feeds a reservoir. And they were like, oh, we haven't thought about we're not sure. We can't close a footpath. It's not going to be rewilded if people are walking across the field that's wild with their dogs and stuff. And he's like, and I can't just let animals die in the river. So we would, if we were going to farm it, we'd fence it off and we'd keep the animals out of the river. And the council were like, oh, we haven't had these questions yet. So you can't just say, we're just going to rewild everything, because it's not. I spoke to an ex-army chap at the weekend, and he summed it up. He said, nature has to be managed to a certain extent. We don't live in an unmanaged world. You can't just say, well, we're going to manage everything between the hedges or the sides of the road and inside all the cities and towns and people's houses, and everything else is just going to go to pot, because you can't do it. We've designed a country that made nature fit around us. When I lived in Germany, forever I used to see like wildlife bridges across motorways and stuff. So they'd funnel all the wildlife to a certain point, and then they could still go through the forest as if it was as it was. You don't see that really very often here. It's a road going through there. I don't know what's going on with the high speed HS2? That's not far from here, is it?
Yeah, it's not far from here.
I've got no idea what the environmental impact of that is. No one really does, but it's apparently more important you can get from London to, Birmingham in, 45 minutes?
Rapid, yeah. Rapid.
And it's like, that's great, but we just had COVID. Aren't most of those people going to be working from home? I don't know. But, do you know what I mean? I'm a real cynic, but do you know what I mean? That'd be a great mobile office.
Yeah, but think about how many cars, journeys, and must be reduced.
Yeah, you're right.
I haven't looked into it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm of the same, probably like the chap you had on last week, the conspiracy theorist.
Steely Broom.
Yeah, so you see, I think, for example, we should open up the canals again. Let's get the canals going again. Take some lorries off the road, put them on the trains, and put them on the canals. Get the canals working again. They do it in Germany, where I used to live in Mannheim. There's a lot of army bases around there. It's not far from Ramstein. They're still using the Rhine River. You see barges going up and down there. I mean, they're huge. It's not that hard. But anyway,
the size of canals, right?
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. It's not going to work, obviously. But there's too many tourists and too many stag parties
going
up
off the beaten path.
We are, aren't we?
Right.
Where are we going to go?
Do
you want me to talk about Forces Farming?
That's
where
what
it
I was
came
going to
from?
ask you. So,
That's probably why I
So
came
the
up.
aspiration is for the farm,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Soon. Fingers crossed. Is that you want it to be overwhelmingly operated by X Mill?
Yeah, yeah. So the plan is that we can run Forces Farming Limited would run basically farms or land or help manage land with ex-military direct input. So, for example, if you said, like I mentioned, the dairy industry, if someone said, I'm interested in getting into dairy, I don't really know much about it, but I may as well give it a go, that's fine. Come down to the dairy where we are in Hampshire, that we're looking at renting basically and running as a business under Forces Farming. Come down, spend a day just to start with. I'll take you around the cattle. We'll do some cattle handling, this, that, and the other. And joking aside, if someone turns up with like carrier bags over their trainers, and you're like, it's not really going to work, is it? But if someone turns up,
You know they're RAF then.
I don't know that. You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
But and the value then to a farmer, for example, or to a potential employer, is that I've sort of vetted them to a certain extent, and it doesn't cost me anything. If someone wants to come down and give me a hand doing this, doing that, making hay, making silage, even just to the point, you've seen what Nick's done with the cabin and stuff like that. Even just having days where you say to people, look, we're not doing anything glamorous today. We're moving X, Y, and Z to there, and that's it, sort of thing. Or we're chucking bales, or doing this, doing that. But if it's a site that can give someone something to do or a step into a different direction, then it's worthwhile. And the difference with Forces Farming is, and what a lot of farmers are saying to me at the moment, is it engages on that social aspect. So farming's great. We can, I said this earlier today, but we can plant more trees, and we can do this, and we can do that, and we can protect the environment, and we can eat less meat, and we can do this. But there's got to be a pool of people that are not available to farmers, but that want to get into farming at this time of change. I mean, chap on Sunday again I was talking with, he said it's like the next agricultural revolution. So agriculture's gone through basically 4 revolutions. So the first one, they started turning the soil and getting better yields, and then it went through to mechanization. They got a tractor, over a horse, and then it went through to fertilizer and better yields and so on and so forth. And then, of course, post-war, everyone was told, you rip out your hedgerows, we need more food, we need more everything to feed the nation following the Great Wars. Farmers went, right, okay, if you're going to pay me, if you're going to subsidise my costs and make me grow more, I'll do it. And what's happening now is farmers are actually looking at it and going, right, well, maybe we need to use less fertiliser, or maybe we need to use more animals, or maybe we need to, let someone else run the farm, or hand it over to a family relative or whatever. And that's this 4th or sort of 5th agricultural revolution that's going on at the moment, is the transformation of food and farming. But it's a fucking awesome time to get into it. There's so much going on, to look at. But yeah, the plan is that Forces Farming will be a farming location, and then that might be, come in for a day and we'll do your telehandler, your sort of JCB forklift kind of license, but at the same time you can spend a bit of valuable time on actually doing stuff with it, rather than just turning up, doing the certificate and going home. And then you turn up on a farm and they go, right, so can you stack those bales? No, I've never done that. All right, okay, I better show you how to do it. And then you spend the first week at your new job or somewhere, learning how to do stuff. Whereas actually, if you'd done that for a few hours with me, you'd have a bit better of an idea. And it doesn't cost me anything. And there's companies that are invested in the idea of supporting the whole movement of sort of Forces Farming, supplying machines or, locations, that sort of thing. But going back to the animal side of it, there's that underlying, let's say, benefit of just, it sounds silly, but just hanging out with animals. It's good. Working with animals is good. It's frustrating sometimes when they don't go where they should, or they go where they shouldn't, and that's it. But I spent January to end of May working for a friend, and she's got 2,500 breeding sheep, and they had basically 1,900 of them lambed in April, May time, and they ended up with 3,000 lambs. So there's 5,000, more than 5,000 sheep. You add in the other ones, so there's probably about 6,000 sheep that she's managing, and it's her and then the head shepherd, who's a friend of mine. But I've never seen someone like so committed that works so hard, and I full on, you know, new respect for shepherds and doing what they're doing. So like I was saying to you about the guy, so I went back the other day and they were shearing, and the whole point of this conversation is that I'm just giving like options or potential ideas for someone that wanted to get into it. But like the shearer, so we were shearing sheep the other day. The guy that's been doing it, the guy that runs the company, he's been doing it about 5 or 6 years. So he's lugging probably 8 to 10 hours a day, a 60-kilo sheep out of the gate, basically between his legs, hold it down, shear it. He's doing that in about 45 seconds and earning £1. But over the day, he's probably earning, I don't know, say about 300 quid. And I don't know any other job where you can get a physical workout. If you don't want to talk to anyone, that's absolutely fine. The music's blaring, it's loud, it's busy. If you want to switch off, but you're fit, go and be a shearer, like for six weeks or whatever. It's a way of doing something different. You know, honestly, I couldn't do that job.
I want to know what music he had blaring when he was shearing the sheep. What did he have on?
Do you want me to play it?
Did he really?
I made a quick video. One of them.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Please play it. What is it?
Hang on, I'll have to find it. So I've got. Oh, hang on.
Just while you're finding it. I grew up on a farm, mate.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to bring up.
One of the most incredible upbringings that anyone can ever have, and I loved that environment. And it was a breeding farm. It was sheep, and it was cows, and it was just unbelievable. And the variety of what you could. Because I'd help out on the farm. Yeah. Sometimes in the summer, sometimes in the winter. I would go lambing in the winter if they want. And I was young and. Lambing in the winter to go if they wanted. I'd go out on the quad with the farm, and we go to the sheep that be struggling to give birth, and we lug it onto we'd either like help it give birth there, we'd lug it onto the quad, take it back in because his mum was a vet, and then she'd help. I remember pulling a calf out of a cow that was struggling to give birth, and it was horrific at the time. Yeah. Like, obviously, I now know it's normal, but and to pull the calf out, the cow stood up. With the calf's head half out, and the cow was in tatters, like it was really dodgy. And they got the tractor in, and they put the tool on the back of the tractor. They put tied straps around the calf's front feet, and they pulled the fucking calf out of the cow with the tractor. But they both survived, and the calf up and cut them out. Unbelievable. And then the baling in the summer, like you said, you got.
That's not normal, by the way. You don't normally pull cows.
No, I know. But it's, and then like dipping the sheep, and it's just, there's such variety. It's physical workout. It's not when I was doing it as a kid because I wasn't at that level, but it's brain work. It's complex stuff. And I remember, what the farm hands were like with each other. It was just fucking banter. It's just banter. It's just good, that kind of environment. I think that you would crave when you leave to go and where'd you get it? There's certain industries, obvious industries where you can go and get that. Construction industry, you get the banter. It's fucking hard work. People are grafting. It's open. It's honest. Someone gets thumped every so often, rightly so, because they messed up, kind of thing. Exactly. Farming is another one like that. Yeah. Farming is another one like that.
That banter element is. I mean, someone said to me once when we were at Mission Motorsport. Up at Silverstone, there was a chap came over. He was an ex-Marine. I can't remember what he ended up doing, but his family farmed. And he said to me, he was at home, and one of the workmen said something to him, and he turned around to me. He was like, "Mate, that is fucking dark." And he was
Where was he, on a farm?
His family had a farm.
Oh right, yes. Right.
And this guy had been there like 40 or 50 years. He'd worked on the family farm, so he'd known his parents like 20 years before this chap was born or whatever. But he turned around to me. He was like, "That's fucking dark. You can't believe you said that." And he went, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Mate," he said, "some of the stuff I've seen is it's bootneck, isn't it? They call it." Yeah. He's like, that's like something I would say. Where does it come from? He was like, "Well, I fucking grew up on a farm, mate." He said, "That's not half the humour I've got." And what I always say to people is, you don't need to, if I put my Forces farming hat on rather than a dirty farming hat, but if you don't want to transition as much as possible, as much as you think you have to, well, fucking hell, go and work on a farm. You can have that if you don't want to talk to anyone, fucking hell, you don't have to. You can either sit in a tractor on your own, or you can go and be a shepherd on your own. You don't have to talk to anyone. But if you do want a load of banter, where you're taking the piss out of each other. We had it a couple of years ago. I was on a harvest team. We had two forage harvesters harvesting crop for the biogas plant, and there was about 6 of us on the trailers. We would chat all day on the CB radios. You didn't even have the radio on, and I've never known like 9 blokes just get on like that and have a laugh and have banter and take the piss out of each other. And you can't do that if you work in a bank or on a high street, or or have to wait till you get. That's the thing, though, or you have to wait till you get home till you have a bit of a, cool off sort of thing. It's like, no, if you're having a bad day, fucking just jump out of the tractor and have 5 minutes and chill out. It's not. No one's going to shoot you. No one's going to fucking tell you off if you're having a bad day and you say something. Fucking hell. That's the other side of farming. To be fair, that I did want to mention. It's the industry with the highest suicidal rate, and it's mental health is a serious thing in farming. I don't put any kind of rose tinted spectacles on the industry. It's like, it's fucking hard work. It's long hours. If you want to commit to it, it's, if you get like the assistant shepherd, for example, where I was saying was lambing, if he gets a phone call on Sunday night at 7 o'clock, if he's just sitting down for a roast dinner and they ring and say, sorry, the sheep are out or the cows are out, that's it. He's got to go. So it works both ways, but it's a fucking good place to be.
And you were saying when we first met, I remember you mentioned to me that on some, or quite regularly, you go on a contract on a farm, working in an estate, and you get accommodation like a house.
Yeah. It's that traditional industry where workers are not expected. That's the wrong way. Where workers invest their lives in their job, and that's rewarded by accommodation or a house or whatever. So there's a chap, a guy called Brody. He's at Sandhurst. I don't know what he is. I think he's a commissioned officer. I don't know. I said I'm terrible with what positions people are. But anyway, he came to me about a year and a half ago and said, I'm interested in getting into agriculture, some sort of management, so on and so forth. Wind forward about a year and a half. Of course, we had COVID in between. But I was at a show a couple of weeks ago, and a guy I know who works for an organisation, we had a chat, caught up, etc. And as I was leaving, he said, by the way, farmer friend of mine in North Warwickshire somewhere, I can't remember exactly where it is off the top of my head, the farm manager there is well over retirement age. Do you know of anyone ex-military that's interested in getting into becoming like a trainee farm manager? And I said, yeah, I do. I've got exactly the bloke. I'll send him your details and I'll get him to send over an application. He did that. Wind forward about a week later, he's been offered the job. He's accepted the job. He's handed in his resignation, and he's going to move basically up this way. I'll have a look on my map in a bit, but yeah, he's going to move up here as a trainee farm manager to take on this family farm eventually over the next couple of years. But as part of that package was a 3-bedroomed house, and that's on the farm. That's owned by the estate. It's more valuable. It's a tough one, because if you imagine if you were offered a house, that's probably worth, I don't know, for argument's sake, I don't know what a country cottage would cost in rent around here. Probably £1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So you think there's 12 grand that the farm's missing out on. So if you said 6, maybe round figures, say it's going to cost the farm 10 grand, for example. They don't have any rent coming in from it. So they might offer a lower salary, but suddenly you haven't got to find any rent, you haven't got to find a mortgage, you've just got to go to work, and that's paid for your house. It's a big pressure off of your sort of mind. And there are still jobs available, So he's been offered a job with a house and accepted it, and he's working out the sort of circumstances with them now, kind of thing. But because you're invested in that family, invested in that job, you're rewarded sort of accordingly, which whether that's a house or a vehicle, probably a vehicle costs, I don't know, best part of 5-6 grand a year. If you don't have to pay for a car, if you're not paying for fuel, suddenly you're not, you don't have to pay insurance, you don't have to pay tax, MOT. It's worth quite a lot every month, and as long as you don't abuse it, it's sort of, it works out. But likewise on the other side is if someone then decides to leave, that I wouldn't have said can cause ripples, but it's quite a sensitive industry. So if you just had a bad day and were like, fuck this, I'm not having to do this, I'm not getting up tomorrow, I'm not going to milk tomorrow. Well, hang on a minute. Suddenly there's no one else that can do it. If you've had a bad day, you sort of need, sounds really bad, but you kind of need to suck it up, buttercup, because tomorrow the cows need to be milked.
Same as the military.
Exactly. You can't walk out, you can't go, and you can't unfit. But, and this is where Forces Farming sort of sits, you can ring me up and have a chat and go, do you know what, I've had a fucking shit day. Calves died, another cow did this, that didn't fucking work. I put the milk in the wrong place. that's shit. They shouted at fucking hit that mic again. They shouted at me for this, and I sort of sit in between the employer and the person that's doing the work and say, all right, well, hang on a minute. I'll ring them up and I'll talk to them about X, Y, and Z, and I'll have a chat with them and I'll talk to them about, because the thing is, I didn't realise, in the military, you don't have 3-month reviews. You start a job now, and generally in 3 months, you come together with your employer and go, right, we're going to sit down and talk about it. I had a chap who was down in Bovington. He was hired by a dealership, a machinery dealership, and he rang me up after a couple of months, and he was like, fucking hell, I've got my 3-month review tomorrow. What the fuck am I going to do? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I never had one before. We just got promoted and moved, and that was it. And I was like, right, first of all, it's as much for you to tell the company if something's not right as it is for them to tell you if something's not going right on your side. He said, yeah, but what if they fire me? I was like, they're not going to fire you. It's a 3. I said, you'll have the same in 6 months. It's standard procedure sort of thing. And he was like, oh, right, okay. But we spent half an hour talking about it, and it was fine. He went in there and sorted it out, sort of thing. And he's quite happily engineering, playing with tractors and toys and bits and pieces now. But it's just about, I think, that's if you want to know, forces farming, it's just like facilitating someone's transition from here to there, sort of thing. It doesn't cost me a lot. That's hence the reason it's not for profit. It's got the charity in the background, because it doesn't cost me a lot to do, and if I can help someone get a job, so that's 2 people hired in a year through COVID, and 1 guy down in Kent who's volunteering on a farm. That's in my own time. I don't take any money out of the company. The company's just sitting there at the moment, just as a name, eventually to work through to rent 2 farms, hopefully over the next 6 to 12 months, and start producing food. As we highlighted with the price of milk, if you think it costs you 90p and it actually costs you 75, there's a margin there in inverted commas that could go into charity, that could fund this whole project. And that's where the idea of forces farming food comes from, is that it's a self-funding sort of charity, basically. So, oh, fucking hell. Stop.
You've bumped that mic 5 times.
I know. I'm going to tell you.
Last question, because we're going to need to start wrapping up in a minute.
Yeah.
Where does the connection to forces come from? You're not military.
No. A lot of people tell me I am. I don't know why. So anyone that serves must come out with a beard and tattoos and slightly overweight and smoke.
Gobshite.
Yeah, gobshite, exactly. Do you know what? You called me that a while ago because you said, no, you're just this weird civvy that gets on with people. So I'll quickly go over it. I was sitting in one of the previous jobs I did. I was a technology consultant for GPS steering and things like that and whatnot. So I was sat with a contractor. We were talking about data and his tractors and machines, and he wasn't there. I was like, "What's up?" And he was like, "Fucking hell." He's like, "I've had my insurance renewal come through." He said, "I've got 100 grand's worth of claims in 1 year from people." Seasonal drivers driving on people's grass, damaging gate posts, damaging tractors, smashing windows in the machines, backing into buildings.
So his drivers being wankers, and the customers whose drivers are servicing were putting claims against the company.
Yeah. But I said to him, but that's damaging your business name. And he was like, never really sort of thought about it like that. I said, when I spent a long time in Germany, I learned a lot about agriculture and the industry and how even agricultural contractors need to market themselves, have a reputation, whatever, etc. So I just said to him, have you never thought about recruiting from the military? And he went, I wouldn't know where, I'd love to, but I wouldn't know where to start and I wouldn't know how to make sure they've got
Why
the
did you
basics.
suggest that though?
I don't know. I've always known there's a crossover, but it just came to me and I was just thinking, it was down near Guildford, and I was just thinking, there must be a group of people, let's say a sector who have come out, and then through when I moved back to the UK from Germany, I got back in touch with Nick Garland, and I think it was 2016 when he left, and we just sort of picked up. I just rang him up, and I was like, when you came to leave, I said, was agriculture put to you as a job? And he was like, mate, it's not even on the radar. You're as far disconnected. And then, excuse me, one of the early podcasts I did with Will Blackburn, he said, when you're serving or when you're posted somewhere, 9 times out of 10, you're probably walking through farmland. So actually, there's almost a synergy there already, and it just sort of develops from there really. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to try and find my way through how and who to talk to and stuff like that. But there's never really been any sort of solid link. I think And I think with like let's say my mental health challenges that I've had in the past of when I left my sort of corporate career and good salary and things like that, and crashed and burned, and divorce and things like that, and hit rock bottom. I just think, well, fucking hell, I had to pick myself up from a very, very low point, and build my life again, sort of back into farming, if that makes sense. Because when I came out of a corporate job, I could not get a tractor driving job. Believe it or not, people were just going, you've had good money, you'll be here for about a month and then you'll leave, sort of thing. So I had, believe it or not, when I came back, had 87 applications. I applied for jobs, and eventually got a job working driving tractors. And I just thought, you know what, I've just fallen back in love with it. I love it, and if I can help promote it to other people, and likewise, the other bit for me, and this is where Nick really sort of helped, it's a family unit. Generally transitioning out, and if I can focus on a successful transition in terms of the partner comes home from the job over the moon, happily loves it, been playing with sheep all day or cows or driving a tractor, that's great. But if the spouse and the kids are not happy, it's not sustainable. So, for example, we were chatting. I went to see my accountant, for example, the other week. He's down in Dorset, the middle of nowhere, basically, tiny village. And I was explaining what I was doing, forces farming, and helping people. And I said the nice thing for me is, I said, it brings people into the rural community. And he turned around to me and went, if you find anyone that wants to be an accountant in a rural village in Dorset, let me know. He said, we cannot find people for love nor money. But you see, if I can find someone a job on a farm in Dorset and it's commutable distance for the spouse, then they could move into like an accountancy career, you see, and then suddenly, even if it's just 2 days a week, you've got something else there for the whole family. And it's that element there that's really important, I think, to move forward. And that's why, Forces Farming's a farming business, because it's me and my other half and the animals. And it's about the farmer, it's about the person, if that makes sense. That's where the whole industry sort of starts. And if you can get the whole family on board with that, then you're on to a good direction, shall we say. And I saw something the other day. It was in an article, and the sentence started with "farmers trust farmers," and I thought, "Fucking hell, that's true." And it'd be the same in military, wouldn't it? If you were anywhere in a bar, pub, rugby club, whatever, and if you were two competing teams, but it turns out that two of you had served whatever at the same time, somehow knew each other, you'd have something in common. You'd talk in a bar after a game, for example. It'd be exactly the same with farmers.
Because you've got a relatively rare shared experience.
Yeah,
you're in from a minority of the population,
exactly,
in an industry or in a job or an industry. Yeah, if you want to call it that, fucking military and farming, which is very hard.
Yeah, it is.
It affects you as a person.
Yeah.
More so than other industries do.
Yeah.
It's the same with firemen. It's the same with police. It's the same with ambulance service, same with nurses, doctors. It's the old meme, isn't it? Yeah. If you know, you know. It's you meet, they know, and they know things that no one else, and those shared experiences. No, I completely understand. Mate, you're gonna start wrapping it up.
Yeah, no worries.
Farmers Farmers mega. I think it's mega. We wouldn't be having this conversation otherwise.
No, I know.
I think it's a brilliant.
And the fact that we've been chatting for 2 years. And So quickly, the other thing I wanted to say is, in terms of building it all up and where it's got to, people like yourself, I don't want to blow smoke up your ass, people like yourself, Mission Motorsport, Mikey, everyone has looked at it and gone...
Mikey Valance.
Yeah, everyone's looked at it and gone, fucking hell, this is a good idea, and you're not a twat. So, that was a polite word, but it's just the same kind of people, and I think that's why it works. It's because it's just like, go back to me and Nick, but, we were best friends in school. Fucking hell, we used to ride around on mopeds, and I wrecked loads of, shit at his house and wrecked bikes and did, pimped his car. But we were the same kind of people. And I know that's what you need to know someone, if that makes sense, to help them get into agriculture. So I get a lot of emails, and you reply and you talk back and forth, but they don't, someone's not serious, if that makes sense. But if I can get to know that person and their situation and help them move forward, then it's not a lot off my back, if that makes sense. I'm just helping people find their place and find their way forward, basically.
What about women? We've been very sexist in this conversation. What about women in the industry?
I mean, that is massive. Seriously. So there's a whole movement specifically focused on. It's basically, if you search the hashtag she who farms She Who Dares Farms, you find a lot about organisations specifically for women coming into agriculture. So there's a massive movement on the social media side. But interestingly enough, looking specifically at the livestock sector, your dairy, your sheep, veterinary courses, they are actively looking for females, basically. So there's a sort of, it's not written anyway, 'cause you can't put it that way. But if you have a female herdswoman, obviously she'll be a herdswoman, not herdsman, but she will have a different relationship to the cows than any man. So, for example, our cows at home, if my girlfriend goes in the field, they know she's been there. She's seen them every single day since she's had them, basically, and fed them and, reared them, injected them, looked after them. And if I go in, they're a bit more like, well, you just come in when she's not around and you don't sort of do that. But if you turn it around the other way, like I do a lot with our sheep, if I go in, the sheep might react differently, sort of thing. But women are, I would say, more sought after in the industry than men in particular, especially around the livestock sector. Definitely, yeah. But talking about vets is interesting. Actually, I had another chap. I put him in touch with an organisation in Wales. He's an ex-medic, and he was like, "What can I do in agriculture?" And I was like, "Look, if you want to potentially use your medic skills for something else, large animal veterinary medicine is fucking screaming out for people." And he dropped me an email back, and he was like, "Mate, that's bang on, awesome idea. Thanks. I'll pursue that." And I was like, "If that's all it needs, great. That's fine. Crack on, But yeah, no, definitely women. And being honest with you, so I went to a show recently called Groundswell Agriculture. I put a load of stuff on LinkedIn. Groundswell. It's all about regenerative agriculture. And you'll have to come up next year. And the other reason is they've got a beer tent, which is open on the night of night after the first day. So it's a really, really good show. But the amount of female speakers, easily 50-50, honestly. And in a show where they must have had, I guess, knocking on 100 speakers, 100 sessions. I bet easily half of them were female. And the thing is, as I said before, farmers trust farmers. It doesn't matter if you're female, male, whatever. If you want to get into farming, if you're passionate and interested and motivated, fucking hell, the industry, it would take anyone. Massive, not take anyone, but do you know what I mean? It's a great place to work for anyone, if that makes sense. So, yeah, women, massive, especially in the dairy industry. Again, if anyone wants to work in the dairy industry, hit me up. But it's just a fucking awesome place to work. And I'm going to get you down sometime. We're going to move some sheep and shit like that, because I know you. Yeah, definitely, especially you growing up on farms, mate. And we'll get back up here with like some barbecued lamb, and if Mikey's meats, the barbecue.
Well, he listens to this. He's been told. He'd been told, Mike. He wouldn't have to tell him. He'd offer anyway.
Exactly.
He'd listen to this and go, "Get that meat up here."
Yeah.
Mate, it's been mega. How do people follow what you're doing? Find out more about Forces Farming.
So it's at Forces Farming on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's the same on LinkedIn. Or message me on LinkedIn, Jeremy Gibbs. It's just. That's the thing. Or to be honest with you, my mobile number's on the website. If someone wants to get in touch, yeah, I know, but I don't get that many spam calls. And do you know what? I'm terrible about answering the phone, because if I've got 6 things on the go at once, I can't answer everything. But
so what's the best way for people to get hold of you?
Drop me an email. So go onto the website. There we go. We'll get there in the end. Don't worry, long-winded. So go on the website. You'll see there's an info@forcesfarming.co.uk. Just hit me an email, and then I'll reply straight away. But IT stuff. A lot of my emails end up in spam boxes. I don't know. So.
And the website is forcesfarming.co.uk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Mega. Been a pleasure, mate. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Do it again.
Been a pleasure.